I don't remember the exact moment I slipped, only the sound. There was a crack. Not my body, not yet, but the way my arm smacked the edge of the tub, hard plastic against old bone, then silence, and water still running. Just like that, I was on the floor of my bathroom, naked, cold, and more humiliated than hurt. I didn't scream. At first, I just stared at the ceiling, blinking through droplets. The tiles were cream-colored with one little blue flower in the center of each square. I'd never liked them. They were chosen by my husband, back when we still planned things together, back when planning still made sense. Pain came slow, like a warning. My hip pulsed with pressure. My left leg wouldn't cooperate. When I tried to roll, something in my side flared. Not broken, but bad. Bad enough to know I wasn't getting up on my own. I reached for the counter but couldn't stretch far enough. That's when the panic started to whisper. My phone. It was sitting on the closed toilet lid just 5 feet away. Too far to grab, too close to ignore. So I did what you do when you're older and proud and hurt. I dragged myself. Every inch like crawling through molasses. My knees scraped tile. My elbows slammed the cabinet. But I made it. Unlocked the screen with a wet, trembling finger. I didn't even think of 911. Isn't that strange? My first instinct wasn't emergency. It was family. It was my daughter, Claire. I clicked her name. Me. I fell in the shower. I need help. Please come. 3 dots blinked. I exhaled in relief. Then they stopped. Then came her reply. We're at a movie, she said. Can't leave right now. I'll call after. That was it. No. Are you okay? No. Do you need me to call someone else? Just, I'll call after. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I let the phone fall beside me. The water was still running. The bath mat was soaked. I curled into myself as best I could, trying to keep warm, trying not to cry. But I did cry. Not from the pain, though there was plenty of it. It was something else. That text, so casual. Like I was an interruption to her popcorn. Like I was the burden I'd tried so hard not to become. I remember the smell of my soap, lilac and lemon. I remember the way the water puddled under my ribs. I remember thinking, this is how it ends for some people. Not with drama, not with goodbyes, but with a single ignored message and hours of silence. Time became a slow drip. I thought of all the times I'd answered Claire's calls, 2 a.m., flu emergencies, forgotten permission slips, broken relationships, late bills. I'd shown up every time. I never needed a reason beyond, I need you, Mom. But now I was cold, wet, and waiting, and she was watching a movie. At some point, I tried to text again, but the phone had slipped too far to reach. I laid back down, one cheek against the tile, eyes closed, body stiffening. I lost track of how long I was there. The shadows shifted on the walls. I heard a neighbor's car, a distant lawnmower, a life going on without me. I thought about just falling asleep, letting it be done. But something stubborn sparked inside me. A flame, even small, was still a flame. I stretched again for the phone. Every bone screamed. I opened the keypad, and this time I called 911. The woman on the line had a kind voice. She said help was on the way. She asked if I was alone. I said yes. That word, yes, it cracked something inside me far deeper than the fall. I stayed on the bathroom floor even after the call ended. The woman on the other end had said it would be about 10 minutes. I didn't believe her, not because I thought she was lying, but because time doesn't move the same when you've been forgotten. 10 minutes can feel like a lifetime when you're cold, in pain, and freshly invisible. I closed my eyes and listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no sirens. Just the slow drip of water down the side of the tub and the faint buzzing hum of the ceiling light. 10 minutes turned into 20, or maybe I only imagined it did. I wasn't sure anymore. I tried not to fall asleep. I remembered someone saying that's what kills people, not the fall, but the stillness afterward. I thought of Claire. Not bitterly. Not yet. Just as a daughter. My only child. I remembered sitting beside her crib in 1982, watching her chest rise and fall, terrified she'd stop breathing. I remembered making her a strawberry shortcake costume for her third Halloween. I remembered the divorce, how she held my hand in court and whispered, "We don't need him, Mommy." So how did we get here? How does a daughter, the same girl who once begged to sleep in your bed after a bad dream, become a woman who can shrug off your cry for help like a spam call? I remembered her teenage years, distance, rebellion, cold silences, but even then I was her constant. I drove her to every therapy appointment, sat through every parent-teacher conference, paid for braces, car insurance, tuition. I smiled through her wedding, even when she married a man I didn't fully trust. I babysat her boys when she went on mental health weekends. I sent groceries when money was tight, even when I wasn't asked. But I hadn't asked for much. I never wanted to be a burden. I kept my needs small, my calls short. When I moved into this smaller house after retirement, I told her I'd be fine on my own. And I meant it until I wasn't. Until that morning, that fall, that text. "We're at a movie." My eyes started burning again. Not from tears this time, but from the fluorescent light overhead. It buzzed and flickered like it was laughing at me. Then I heard it. Sirens. Not close, not yet, but coming. Relief made me dizzy. When the knock finally came, I couldn't answer. The paramedics let themselves in with the code Claire insisted I set up. In case of emergency. I suppose this hadn't qualified. They found me curled up in a damp towel. I must have looked pitiful, but they were kind. They asked my name, my age, if I knew where I was. I answered each one steadily. No crying, no dramatics. I was done begging to be seen. They wrapped me in a blanket, lifted me with care. I winced but didn't make a sound. They strapped me to the stretcher, covered my legs, wheeled me out the door like cargo. I turned my face away as we passed the front steps. I didn't want the neighbors seeing me like this. Not broken, not weak, not discarded. At the hospital, I was processed, examined, x-rayed, sprained hip, bruised ribs, dehydration. The nurse asked if I wanted to notify family. I hesitated, then said no. Then, after a beat, changed my mind. I didn't want Claire to find out from someone else. So I sent a text. I fell. I'm at St. Luke's. I'm okay. No reply. I was moved to a small room. I stared at the wall. Hours passed. A volunteer brought a lukewarm cup of coffee. I thanked her like she'd saved my life. It wasn't until evening that Claire arrived. Hair done, lipstick perfect, holding her phone in one hand, her coat draped over the other arm. She looked mildly inconvenienced. "Oh, Mom," she said, "why didn't you just wait for us to call back? You always jump to worst-case scenarios." I didn't answer. I looked past her, out the window. The sky was turning that shade of hospital gray blue that never really gets dark. She sighed. "You could have scared the boys." "I didn't call them," I said. My voice was flat, distant. "Well, thank God. I mean, I know you were scared, but still. A hospital trip? And I'm the one they'd blame if something happened." There it was. The truth. This wasn't about me, it was about how I reflected on her. That's when something inside me hardened, not in rage, but in clarity. She wasn't coming for me. Not really, she came to manage the situation. We sat in silence until the nurse returned. Claire smiled at her like a politician. I looked at the nurse and asked quietly, "When can I go home?" The hospital discharged me just before noon the next day. They offered transportation, but Claire insisted on driving me. I wish I'd said no. She spent the ride talking to someone on Bluetooth, laughing once or twice, casually saying, "Yeah, just picked up Mom. No, she's fine. Drama over. Drama." That's what it had been reduced to. A fall, a plea, hours on the floor. Just drama. I stared out the window as we passed the park near the elementary school where I once walked Claire home in the rain with a plastic bag over her head because she forgot her umbrella. She used to squeeze my hand so tightly it would go numb. Now she gripped the steering wheel like it owed her something. When we pulled into my driveway, she put the car in park and leaned her head back. You really should consider assisted living, Mom. If you're going to keep falling. I'm not going to keep falling, I said. She laughed. That's what everyone says until it happens again. There was no offer to help me inside. No, do you need anything? Just a shrug and a shallow smile. Okay, well, let me know if you want to look at brochures. Brochures. For a life that would fit neatly into a hallway, a name badge, and a nurse's schedule. She drove off before I reached the front door. Inside, the house smelled like detergent in silence. The towel from yesterday was still on the floor. A faint wet ring marked the spot I'd laid on for hours. I picked it up, tossed it in the hamper, and sat down on the living room couch slowly, carefully. Everything felt different. And yet, nothing had changed at all. It was me that shifted. I turned my phone off, not to be dramatic, but because I didn't want to be accessible anymore. Not to someone who answered a crisis with a time-stamped excuse and a popcorn kernel in her teeth. That afternoon, I made tea. Not the instant kind Claire bought in bulk, but the good loose-leaf blend I kept hidden in the cupboard behind the cereal. I poured it into the chipped blue mug Derek gave me on our 20th anniversary. It still had a crack near the handle, like most things in my life. Fragile, but usable. Then I sat in the sunlit kitchen, the only room that still made me feel like myself, and started making a list. Not a dramatic one. Just practical. To do. Refill prescriptions. Call Dr. Joshi. Grocery delivery. Spare key to Ellen. Emergency contact update. Ellen lived 2 doors down. She was a widow like me. Tough, funny, always wearing some combination of denim and sarcasm. We weren't close, but she once brought over chicken soup when she heard me coughing through the open window. She'd also seen the ambulance. That evening, I walked slowly to her house with my cane and knocked twice. She opened the door in socks and a Guns N' Roses t-shirt that said, "Welcome to the jungle, we got rules." She looked me up and down. "You alive?" she asked. "Barely," I said. "I was wondering if you wouldn't mind holding onto a spare key." She tilted her head. "Your daughter bail on you?" Let's just say she had a prior engagement. Ellen nodded, like that was all the explanation she needed. She held out her hand. I gave her the key, simple as that. "No drama," she said. "No drama," I echoed. We stood in her doorway for a second, then she pointed to a pie on our counter. "Blueberry, you want a slice?" "Yes," I said, surprising myself. We sat in her small kitchen and ate in silence. The pie was warm, tart, real. No crust from a box, no syrupy canned filling, just blueberries, flour, sugar, and care. Ellen didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. Some women understand betrayal without it being spoken aloud. On the walk home, the air was cool. The sky was heavy with gray, but the kind that feels honest, not sad. Honest. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Not because I was healed, not because I'd forgiven anything, but because for the first time since the fall, I wasn't waiting. And when you stop waiting, you start deciding. Dr. Joshi's office hadn't changed in years. Same dusty fern in the corner, same framed print of a sailboat on a calm sea. The waiting room chairs still made my back hurt. The nurse still called my name too loudly. I sat quietly on the exam table, paper crinkling beneath me as I waited. My hip still ached when I stood too quickly. Bruises bloomed slowly along my side like dark flowers, reminders of the fall I now referred to simply as the accident. Dr. Joshi entered with his usual brisk kindness, late 40s, polite, practical, the kind of doctor who remembered your cat's name but didn't waste time pretending he wasn't busy. "Margaret," he said, glancing over his glasses, "you gave us quite the scare." "I'm still here," I said. He nodded, scanning my chart. Sprained hip, deep contusions, no fractures. Lucky. Feels like a different kind of broken. He looked up. "You're not just talking about your hip." I didn't respond right away. He set the clipboard down. "Want to talk about it?" I hesitated, then surprised myself. I texted my daughter for help when I fell. She told me she was at a movie, said she'd call later. He didn't flinch, just let the words hang there. I laid there for nearly 3 hours. I had to call 911 myself. He nodded slowly. You have every right to feel abandoned. That word abandoned was one I hadn't said aloud. Hearing someone else say it felt both validating and like pressing a bruise. Do you have anyone else listed as your emergency contact? No. You may want to reconsider that. I already have. He handed me a form. Let's update your records while you're here. I wrote Ellen's name, number, and address with deliberate care, every letter pressed into the page like I was engraving it. Would you like to also update your power of attorney while we're at it? He asked. I blinked. Can I do that here? We can initiate it. It's not uncommon. He left the room briefly, returning with a small red folder. Inside, a simple form, a few signature lines, nothing dramatic. But it felt like the most important pen I'd ever held. I checked the boxes, one by one. Who can speak for me in a medical crisis? Ellen. Who can access my records? Ellen. Who can make choices if I can't speak? Not Claire. Not anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about trust. And when trust breaks, it's not a tantrum to say, you don't get a second chance at this. Dr. Joshi reviewed everything quietly, then said, I'll have my assistant notarize it this week. It'll be in place before your next refill. He stood to leave, but paused at the door. You're not alone in this, Margaret. More women do what you just did than you'd think. I smiled faintly. We just don't talk about it. Until we do. Outside, the sun had started to warm the pavement. My cane tapped along the sidewalk, and every step felt a little more solid. I stopped at the corner bakery on my way home, bought a loaf of fresh bread and a slice of lemon pound cake. The girl behind the counter gave me an extra napkin and said, You look like someone who needs a treat today. She had no idea how right she was. Back home, I placed the red folder in the top drawer of my nightstand. Then I sat in my favorite chair by the window with my cake and tea. Franklin, the neighborhood cat who visited occasionally, watched me through the glass. I gave him a nod. He blinked once, then walked away uninterested, but polite. I used to wait all day for someone to check in. A call, a text. Proof that I still mattered. But now I waited for nothing. The house was still, but it didn't feel empty. It felt mine. It was the Thursday morning when I walked next door to Ellen's. The air was crisp, the kind that carried the first whisper of fall. Leaves hadn't turned yet, but they were thinking about it. I could feel it in the wind, that restless, quiet turning. The world does just before it changes clothes. I held a small envelope in my hand. Inside, a note, my emergency contacts, and a spare house key. I'd added a little card with my allergies, my blood type, and the name of my doctor neatly printed in my careful handwriting. I knocked twice. Ellen opened the door wearing pajama pants with dogs on them and a mug that said, Don't talk, still dangerous. She looked at the envelope, then at me. You leaving me your will? She asked. I smirked. Just a few things in case I fall again. She took the envelope without ceremony and stepped aside. Come in, I just made coffee. Her house always smelled like onions, cinnamon, and something old that wasn't unpleasant. The kind of smell that only comes from cooking real meals for decades in the same kitchen. She gestured to the chair near the window and poured me a cup without asking how I take it. We sat in silence for a minute while she flipped through the envelope. Updated emergency contact, medical notes, key. Damn, woman, you're more organized than I've ever been. I just don't want to be caught like that again, I said. Ellen looked over her glasses. You mean on the floor or alone? Both. She gave a slow nod. You're not the first woman on this street who's come to that conclusion. I keep a baseball bat by my bed and a crock pot near the phone. One's for safety, one's for comfort. I smiled. And which one works better? Depends who's trying to get in. We both laughed, the kind of laugh that women over 60 learn deep, earned, edged with history. After a while, Ellen said, "You told Claire?" "No." "She know you changed your medical stuff?" "No." "She gonna throw a fit?" "Eventually." Ellen sipped her coffee. "Let her. You're not required to give her what she won't value." That line, "You're not required to give her what she won't value," settled into me like a stone in a still lake. Heavy but necessary. It rippled. We talked about nothing for a bit: pie recipes, a city councilwoman we both disliked, the weather. When I got up to leave, Ellen walked me to the door and said, "If anything happens, I'm the nosy kind of neighbor. The good kind, not the gossip kind." "I know. Also, if you die, I'm taking your tea collection." I expected nothing less. We both laughed again, but softer this time, a kind of truce between women who'd seen enough to stop pretending. Back at home, I moved slower, but not out of fear, out of choice. Deliberate. I brewed more tea, folded laundry, and played an old vinyl record on Derek's turntable. It crackled like memory. The music filled the space without asking me to be cheerful. I'd always believed that peace had to be earned through apology or reconciliation. But now I was learning. Peace can also come through boundaries. Later that day, I got a text from Claire. Claire. "Hey, how are you? We might swing by this weekend." "No, sorry." No follow-up from the hospital visit. Just a casual drop-in message like nothing happened. I stared at it for a moment and then didn't reply. I wasn't angry. I just didn't owe her anything right now. Instead, I opened the red folder, reviewed the contact sheet, then slipped it into a plastic sleeve and labeled it, "In case of emergency, Ellen." I didn't cry. I just closed the drawer and went outside to water my garden. The basil needed trimming. The petunias were starting to wilt. But the marigolds? The marigolds were thriving. That night, as I folded fresh towels in my bedroom, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Not the soft, polite image I usually glanced past. No, this time I really looked. My silver hair pulled back, eyes a little swollen from the lingering bruises around my cheekbone, the lines around my mouth deeper than I remembered. But there was something else. Something solid. Still. I didn't look fragile. I looked finished, not as in done, but as in fully formed, and I hadn't felt that in years. Later, I sat in the living room with the photo album I hadn't opened in a decade. The one with Claire's baby photos, all those Polaroids and hand-scribbled captions I wrote back when I still thought motherhood came with a built-in guarantee of gratitude. One picture caught my eye. Claire, age 5, covered in paint, smiling like a tiny storm. I remembered that day clearly, her preschool's art fair. She'd made a disaster of a papier-mâché bowl, but I clapped like it belonged in a museum. She'd run to me and shouted, "You're the best mommy ever." I whispered to the page, "You used to mean that." And maybe back then she did. I flipped through more pages. Birthday cakes I stayed up late to bake. Christmas mornings I went without so she could have enough. A prom dress I hand-stitched when the store-bought one didn't fit right. The photos told a story of devotion, of sacrifice, of a woman who gave everything and only asked silently to be remembered. When Claire left for college, I stood in the dorm parking lot too long after goodbye. She'd promised to call every day. That lasted a week, then every Sunday, then sometimes. Still, I was proud of her. Even when she moved in with Ben, even when she forgot to invite me to their engagement dinner and claimed it was a last-minute thing. Even when I found out about her first pregnancy through a Facebook post. Still, I forgave. Still, I showed up. Even when she forgot my birthday twice and only remembered when I sent a thank you card for a gift she never gave. Still, I cooked, babysat, wired money, stayed late, and stayed silent. Because that's what mothers do, right? But something changed on that tile floor, something I can't name. It wasn't anger, it was awareness. A switch flipping, a curtain pulled back. I saw clearly what I'd been pretending not to see for decades. She didn't consider me central to her life, and I was the afterthought, the fallback, the one she remembered when she needed childcare, casserole, or comfort. And I was done being the one holding up a relationship by myself. That night, I closed the photo album and slid it back into the shelf. Not angrily, not dramatically, just gently, like setting down a memory that no longer needed to be carried. Instead, I opened my drawer and took out the notebook I kept for recipes. I tore out an empty page and wrote, "Things I still want to learn. Grow tomatoes from seed. Paint with watercolors. Make homemade granola. Use the radio again. Visit a lighthouse. Laugh without waiting for permission." The next morning, I went outside and checked the garden. The basil had gone to seed, but the rosemary was strong. Claire didn't call, and I didn't check. But Ellen waved from her porch. She was holding a cup of tea in one hand and a crossword in the other. I raised mine back. Sometimes family shows up where you least expect it. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Claire finally showed up at my door again. No call, no text, just the sound of tires in the gravel and that familiar knock, the one that always sounded more like announcement than question. I opened the door slowly. She stood there with a half smile, holding a paper bag that read, "Fresh Flaky Bakery," her version of a peace offering. "Morning, Mom," she said, like everything was normal. "Thought I'd bring over some croissants." Her tone was light, too light, the kind people use when they're avoiding what needs to be said. I stepped aside, wordless. She walked in like it was still her right. The house was clean, sunlight streaking across the hardwood floors. The scent of fresh lemon balm from the tea I'd just brewed lingered in the air. She looked around, set the bag on the counter, then glanced at me over her shoulder. "You look better." "I am." She blinked at my short response, unaccustomed to its coolness. Usually, I filled the silence for her, smoothed the edges, offered forgiveness before she earned it. Not this time. "I've been meaning to check in more. Things have been, busy." I stirred my tea. "We're all busy." She gave a short laugh, unsure. "Well, I brought your favorite, almond croissant." I nodded, but didn't move toward the bag. A beat passed. Then she said, "I've been feeling kind of awful about the fall." Kind of. Awful. Two words that didn't belong together. "You didn't reply to my last message," she added, softer now. I was worried. I finally looked at her, really looked. Not at her makeup, her perfect nails, her boutique sweater. I looked at the woman who used to need me but now barely recognized me unless I was useful. "I saw your message," I said. She waited. I just didn't feel the need to respond. Her face shifted, that flash of discomfort when someone realizes the script has changed. The parent isn't following the expected cues. "Oh, okay, I didn't mean to upset you." "But you did," I said, calm as a still lake. She exhaled, impatient. "Mom, it was a misunderstanding. We were literally walking into the theater. I thought you were being dramatic." "I couldn't stand," I said plainly. "I was soaked, in pain, alone, and you thought I was being dramatic." Claire's voice dropped. "I didn't know it was serious." "That's because you didn't ask." Silence expanded between us. She sat down at the kitchen table, folding and unfolding her hands. "I don't want to fight." "We're not fighting." "Then what are we doing?" "We're sitting in the space where things stopped being what they were." Her eyes welled not tears of understanding, but guilt. And guilt wears a different face than remorse. Guilt wants relief. Remorse wants repair. "You're really mad at me, aren't you?" she whispered. "No," I said honestly. "I'm just done pretending this is more than what it's been." Claire opened the paper bag, pulling out the croissant, setting it gently on a plate like that act might somehow rewind time. She looked small suddenly, not childlike, just diminished. "I've been trying," she said. "It's just hard, balancing everything." "Claire," I said softly but firmly, "you balance what you care about." She didn't answer. I stood and placed my teacup in the sink. "I appreciate the visit, but I have plans this morning." She blinked. "Oh?" "Yes. A friend and I are going to the garden center. Who? Ellen. Her expression froze. The neighbor? Yes. More silence. This one more revealing than the others. I walked her to the door. She picked up her purse, lingered, then asked, "Are we okay?" I didn't lie. We're not broken, but we're not the same. Claire looked like she wanted to say something else, maybe apologize, maybe beg, maybe defend. But instead, she nodded. Okay. I closed the door after she stepped out, then locked it. Not out of spite, but because boundaries aren't punishments. They're clarity. Ellen and I spent the morning buying basil and tomatoes. She teased me for choosing marigolds again. I told her some things, the right things, were worth repeating. When I got home, the almond croissant was still on the counter. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't eat it either. A week after Claire's visit, I found myself sitting across from a man in a brown corduroy blazer, a legal pad on his desk, and a mug that read, "Ask me about my fees." His name was Nathaniel Rowe, lawyer, elder care specialist, recommended by Ellen's friend from church. He had a soft voice and sharper eyes, the kind that didn't miss much. "I want to change some things," I told him. He didn't ask why. Just opened the folder in front of him. Medical proxy, will, power of attorney, all of it. He nodded, uncapped a pen, and began writing. I listed out my assets, the house, the savings account Derek and I built before cancer took him. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough for someone like Claire to suddenly become available. "I want to name someone else as my agent," I said. "Not your daughter?" "No." "Any other family?" "No." He looked at me carefully, then down at the form. "Who should we list?" "Ellen Coates," I said. "Neighbor. Friend." He paused. "She knows?" "She does." We worked through the paperwork, methodically, precisely. No dramatics, no revenge. Just a woman reclaiming the pen. When it came time to assign beneficiaries, I hesitated for the first time. Nathaniel noticed. "You don't have to do it today," he offered. But I shook my head. "No, I've waited long enough." I didn't cut Claire out entirely. I wasn't cruel, but I shifted the weight, made sure the people who showed up when there were no cameras, no holidays, no inheritance to earn were seen. When we finished, Nathaniel gathered the papers, clipped them together, and placed them in a thick envelope. "I'll have my office notarize these by Thursday. You'll get official copies mailed." He leaned back. "You know, most people wait until something bad happens to do this." "Something did," I said. He didn't ask for details, just nodded. Outside, the wind had picked up. Leaves scratched along the sidewalk like soft reminders. I walked to the bench near the post office and sat, the folder in my lap unopened. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt safe. Back home, I made 2 photocopies of the documents, one for Ellen, one for my lockbox. Then I wrote a short letter to Claire, handwritten, no emotion, just a few lines. "Claire, I've updated my legal and medical documents. You are no longer listed as my contact or agent. This isn't meant to punish you. It's meant to protect me. Please do not call unless it's to check in, not to correct. Mom." I placed it in a plain envelope and mailed it that afternoon. The next few days were quiet, peaceful. No knocks, no guilt-trap voicemails, no performance of concern. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I opened the mailbox to find a letter from Claire. 6 pages, neatly written, a familiar looping script, too neat, too controlled. The first line, "I can't believe you did this." She called it a scene by omission, said I'd humiliated her in front of Ben, accused me of turning Ellen against her, claimed I was mentally slipping and that this wasn't like me. She wrote that Lisa, her oldest, had cried when she found out, that the boys were confused why Grandma didn't want to talk anymore, that Ben was reconsidering helping with the house when it needed repairs. Not one mention of the shower, of the tile, of the hours. Just a long defensive list of how my silence had wounded her image. The final paragraph read, "We're still willing to talk if you're ready to be reasonable." Reasonable. That word sat in my chest like a cold stone, as if survival was unreasonable. as if protecting myself was petty, as if decades of sacrifice had been erased by my unwillingness to pretend nothing had happened. I folded the letter back into the envelope and slid it into a drawer. Then I made toast, buttered it slowly, ate it in my sunroom while the radio hummed an old jazz tune from the 60s. Ellen stopped by later with a container of split pea soup. "You look like you just took a walk through a hurricane," she said. "I got a letter." "From her?" I nodded. She didn't ask what it said. Just passed me a spoon and said, "Storm's over. You're dry now." Nice. And I was. I really was. The days after the letter felt lighter. Not because the ache was gone, but because I finally stopped carrying it like it was mine to fix. Something about naming the truth in ink in documents, in silence, gives you a strange kind of peace. Not joyful, not triumphant, but rooted, like you finally planted your flag in your own life. I started moving more. Not quickly, but with intention. My hip healed faster than expected, and I returned to the garden clipping back dead stems, repotting my spider plant, planting new rosemary. I liked that rosemary didn't ask for much, just sun and space, like the friends I was starting to gather. Ellen and I had fallen into a rhythm. She'd wave when my tea kettle hissed, and I'd wave when her porch light flicked on at night. She brought crossword puzzles, and I started baking again. Not the complicated pies I used to make for Claire's holidays. Simpler things. Banana bread, oat cookies, things that made the house smell like someone cared about it. One morning, I found a flyer on the bulletin board outside the pharmacy. Community Craft Circle Mondays at 11 a.m. in the library basement. Open to all. I hadn't been to anything community in years, but something about the words "open to all" called to me. I showed up that Monday in a blue cardigan and jeans that didn't quite fit. The group was small, 6 women, a man who crocheted scarves, and a table full of mismatched supplies. No name tags, no pressure. I brought my knitting, an old project I never finished, a scarf for no one. A woman named Joanne offered me tea from a thermos. Another named Betty asked if I wanted to join the holiday baking exchange. I said yes. That night, I sat by my window, knitting the same rows I had years ago. But now, it wasn't about finishing. It was about making something slowly, imperfectly, without being told it wasn't enough. I didn't check my phone. It was still off most days. Claire hadn't called again since the letter. I suspected she was waiting for me to cool down, but I wasn't on fire. I was just done. And somehow, that was more powerful. Ellen surprised me later in the week with a used crock pot. "For your soup," she said, "you cook slow. Might as well have a pot that matches." She also brought me a book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. I laughed when I saw it. "Are you trying to make me howl at the moon?" "No," she said. "Just trying to remind you that you still have teeth." We ate dinner that night at my kitchen table. Chicken stew, crusty bread, warm silence. She didn't ask about Claire. I didn't talk about the letter. Some things don't need to be repeated to be remembered. The next morning, I made my tea, opened the door, and found a package on the porch. No note, no sender, just a small box. Nope, inside, a framed photo of Claire's kids. One of them, the youngest, was wearing a shirt I'd sewn years ago. In the photo, he was laughing, arms outstretched. No card, no apology. Just the picture. I placed it on the bookshelf. Not on the mantel, not by the bed. Just somewhere it could be seen without being center stage. Then I lit a candle. Not for prayer. Not for mourning. Just to mark the moment, the quiet beauty of a life I didn't have to earn anymore. That afternoon, Ellen and I walked the trail behind the church. The air smelled like pine. She told me about her daughter in Colorado, a son she rarely saw. "I think we all become someone's afterthought eventually," she said. "I think the trick," I said, "is realizing that doesn't mean we're invisible." She looked at me and grinned. "You're definitely not invisibles." I grinned back. "Neither are you." That night, I returned to my knitting. The scarf was almost done. I didn't know who it was for. Maybe no one. Maybe me. It came in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of call you feel before you hear. I was folding laundry, humming under my breath when the screen lit up. Claire? The name looked strange now, like something from another life. I let it ring once, twice, then picked it up. Hello? Her voice was tight, a little breathless. Mom, we need to talk. There it was. No greeting, no softness, just an agenda dressed as urgency. I sat down at the table, laundry still half folded in the basket beside me. I'm listening. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. Ben's company laid off half the staff. He's been cut, and well, things are hard. The mortgage is tight, and the boys' school fees are due next week, and she trailed off. I waited. We were wondering, she continued, if maybe we could stay with you just for a little while until things stabilize. There was that word again, we. So comfortably collective when it needed to be. I looked out the window. The light was slanting in just right, landing on my little potted violets. They were finally blooming again. I don't think that's possible, I said gently. Silence. Then, what? I'm not set up for guests. You're my mother. I was your mother when I called you from the floor of my bathroom. Her breath caught. You're really going to throw that in my face again? No, I said quietly. I'm just done pretending it didn't matter. She tried to gather herself. You always do this. Hold on to things, twist them into something ugly. I looked down at my lap, at my hands, the ones that had once buttoned her school uniforms, sliced fruit into stars, braided her hair. I'm not twisting anything, I'm just choosing to remember clearly. You're being selfish, she snapped. It didn't land the way she thought it would. Maybe, I said, or maybe I've just stopped accepting less than I gave. There was silence on the line, long, uneven. Then her voice softened, just slightly. The boys miss you. I closed my eyes. I miss them too, I said, but I'm not the one who walked away. They're just kids, and I was just your mother. She didn't have a response to that, not right away. Are you really going to let us struggle? Claire, I've been struggling alone for years. You just didn't see it. Another silence. Then something cracked in her voice. Not anger, but something more raw. I didn't mean for it to be like this. But it is like this, I said. And I didn't make it that way. She sniffed quietly, like she didn't want me to hear it. I have to go, she whispered. Okay. I'll be in touch. I didn't say goodbye. Just ended the call and set the phone face down on the table. I stared at it for a long time, not moving. It didn't feel victorious or cruel. It felt clean. Later that day, I took a walk with Ellen. We didn't talk much, just wandered past the quiet houses, their driveways cracked and flowers blooming in mismatched pots. When we got back, she asked, "You okay?" Yes. You sure? No, but I'm free. We sat on her porch and shared a slice of banana bread. That evening, I received a voicemail. Not from Claire, from her oldest, Lisa. Hi, Grandma. I don't know what happened, but Mom's been weird all day. If something happened, I hope you're okay. Just be careful, please. I miss you. The voice was young, uncertain, real. I saved it. Didn't respond. Not yet. But I held it like a tiny seed in the palm of my hand. Something worth planting later. The next Sunday I heard a knock. Not the usual tap-tap of Ellen's knuckles. This was harder, sharper, the kind of knock that demanded to be answered. I opened the door slowly. There stood Claire. And behind her, Ben, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Claire's eyes were red, as if she'd been crying or preparing to. Mom, we need to talk, she said. Not, can we talk? Not, is this a good time? Just a declaration. I stepped aside, not out of invitation, but to keep the neighborhood from hearing. They walked in. Claire stood near the couch, but didn't sit. Ben hovered by the door, like he wasn't sure whether he wanted to be part of the conversation or a witness to it. "I don't know what's gotten into you," Claire started, "but this isn't like you." I said nothing. "You've always been generous. You've always been there for us." I replied. Ben finally spoke. "Look, I get that you're upset, but leaving your daughter, your grandkids to struggle when you have the means to help, that's cold." I looked at him, steady. "Do you know how long I was on that floor?" He didn't answer. "Do you know how it felt to read, 'We're at a movie,' while I bled into a towel?" Ben shifted. Claire didn't know it was serious. Claire jumped in, voice rising. "I didn't know. I thought you were just being dramatic. You've done that before, haven't you?" My jaw tightened. "I've never asked for help unless I needed it. You just stopped noticing the difference." She flinched, but covered it with indignation. "You're punishing me for one mistake." "It wasn't one mistake," I said, voice low. "It was years of forgetting, dismissing, showing up only when it benefited you. The fall was just the moment I stopped lying to myself about it." Claire's eyes brimmed. Ben stepped forward. "So this is revenge?" "No," I replied. "This is recalibration." They both went silent. I gestured toward the door. "If you came here to change my mind, you won't. If you came to make me feel guilty, I don't. I grieved already, not just the fall, but the loss of the daughter I kept hoping would come back." Claire's lip trembled. "I don't know who you are anymore." I stepped closer. "I'm the woman who raised you, who sacrificed, who loved you even when it hurt. And now I'm the woman who's learning to love herself just as fiercely." Ben grabbed Claire's arm. "We should go." But Claire didn't move. Her eyes searched mine, maybe for softness, maybe for surrender. She found neither. I opened the door. As they walked out, Claire turned back. "What about the kids?" I nodded slowly. "They're welcome when they're old enough to knock with respect." Claire blinked. "That's cruel." "No," I said. "That's a boundary." And I closed the door gently, firmly, with finality. I stood for a moment, hand on the wood, then walked to the kitchen, picked up the kettle, and started a fresh pot of tea. Ellen texted, asking if I was up for soup and cards later. I replied with a simple yes. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves rustled, but inside, stillness. Later that evening, I sat by the fire, knitting in my lap, the scarf almost done. Not for Claire, not for the grandkids, not even for Ellen. Just for me. A simple reminder that warmth can come from your own hands when no one else offers it. The first frost came early that year. I remember stepping outside to get the mail. Breath visible in the air, the porch rails slick with silver. My scarf, the one I'd finished weeks ago, hugged my neck like a gentle promise. Inside the mailbox was a single white envelope. My name written in Lisa's handwriting, her loopy, wide-lettered scrawl I hadn't seen since she was in 5th grade. I opened it slowly. "Hi, Grandma. I don't know what's going on between you and Mom, but I just wanted to say I love you. I hope you're okay. I miss your cookies and your stories. You always made me feel special. I hope I get to see you again someday. Love, Lisa." I sat down on the bench by the window and cried. Not a loud, theatrical cry. Just soft tears, the kind that come from being seen, even in the smallest way. That afternoon, I pulled something from the back of the hall closet. The coat. Thick. Navy blue, fleece-lined. The one I wore the day I fell. The sleeves still bore the faint stain from when I'd crawled toward the bathroom door, hoping someone would come. I carried it outside and draped it over the donation bin near the library. I stood there a moment before letting it go. Not because I needed to forget, but because I finally could. Then I walked inside the library basement. Our Monday craft circle had turned into a full community. Potluck soups and pies lined the folding tables, and Joanne handed me a paper plate and a smile. "Save room for cake," she said, nudging me. Betty brought her coconut layer one. Cake. The word hit me strangely. Warmly. The last time I baked a cake was for Claire's birthday years ago. Chocolate with raspberry filling. She hadn't eaten a slice. Said she was avoiding carbs. I never baked another one after that. Until now. Later that week, I stood in my kitchen, apron on, sifting flour with music playing in the background. Not to impress. Not to win anyone back. Oh, just because I wanted cake. A small one. Vanilla with lemon frosting. I even added edible flowers on top, not for a party, not for display, just for joy. When it cooled, I sliced a piece and placed it on a china plate I hadn't used in years. I poured tea, sat by the window and ate slowly. Each bite a reclaiming. Each sip a declaration. Each moment a quiet revolution. Afterward, I pulled out my notebook, the one I kept for letters never sent. And I wrote, "Dear Claire, I hope you're okay. I truly do. I hope Ben finds work and the kids grow up kind. I hope Lisa keeps writing me letters. But more than anything, I hope you learn what love without conditions looks like, because you had it once, every day, in every way I knew how to give. I've stopped waiting for you to remember. I've started remembering myself. Mom." I folded it, tucked it away, not to be mailed, just to be released. And then I opened a fresh page. No heading, no audience, just space for the next chapter.